Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Week 2 in the books, heading into Week 3. And, wow. There have been so many injuries. I started off last show talking about some of the injuries that have been going on. There's been a lot of people on the injury reports, wide receivers, and people just tearing their ACLs, and people dealing with hamstring injuries. It's been crazy. Here's a list of just some of the players, if not all of the players, who are out for the season with season-ending injuries. Saquon Barkley, Von Miller, Nick Bosa, Derwin James, Cortland Sutton, Anthony Barr, Bruce Irvin, Malik Hooker, Tavon Young, CJ Uzomah, Marlon Mack, Gerald McCoy, Andre Dillard, Zach Banner, Grant Delpit. I think you can add a Marquise Blair to that. This has been an insane season, and the 49ers, they demanded that MetLife Stadium be checked. I think it came back that MetLife Stadium was fine, that the turf was actually fine. I don't know. I don't know what the protocols are or what the standards are for a field, but to see two defensive linemen go down basically back to back, both of them with torn ACLs, and Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas. I don't know. That seems kind of crazy. Right? And then you look as that game went on, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, Raheem Mostert got hurt, now other injuries aren't season-ending, Saquon Barkley ended up getting hurt. This has been a crazy season so far, and it seems like this is going to be the war of attrition. The healthiest team by the end of the season, the best healthy team, is going to be the team that is going to win this thing, because so many star players have taken a hit. Denver, in general, I think their season's basically over. They're signing Blake Bortles to be one of their backups until Drew Lock comes back. I think Denver's season is done. When it comes to the Niners, I think their window has gotten severely smaller. I no longer see this team as a Super Bowl contender. I think they've just lost too much. You remember on IR, they still have Deebo Samuel there. They still have Richard Sherman there. This season has just been it's been fun. It's been off to a really fun start, but the injuries are mounting, and they're mounting quickly, and they all seem to happen at the same exact time. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that they didn't have the appropriate amount of time to practice. Maybe it was just because the routine was so off. I don't know if it was because there was no preseason games. I honestly have no idea. But I do not remember last year injuries mounting this fast. I don't remember it. Maybe it's just blanked, and maybe I just don't remember. But I don't remember seeing this many injuries this fast and having them all be season ending. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into this. So I got a few things I want to talk about today. I have a lot I want to talk about really, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get into all of it. But I want to talk about some Josh Allen. I want to talk about which 0-2 team I believe is most likely to flip their season and be able to get into the playoffs. I want to talk some Falcons, some Dak, and I want to talk some takeaways from the Saints and Raiders game, because I think it is going to be close to the end for one particular quarterback, and it is not Derek Carr. But let's go and get into this. So, as someone who talks about sports, whether you're me or anybody else in the media, whether you work at ESPN or CBS or Fox Sports 1, wherever it is, when you're a person who does sports opinion, sports analyst, whatever it is, people tune in to watch you and to listen to you, not only because they want to hear real sports analysis, not only because they want to hear opinions, it's because they want to hear takes. They want to hear hot takes. Not necessarily out of this world crazy, Russell Wilson, he's not that great of a quarterback, really. I think it's all part of the Pete Carroll system. They don't want to hear that, because that kind of stuff is ridiculous. If they want to hear that stuff, it's because they mainly just want to make fun of you. But what comes along with making these kinds of takes and these predictions and everything and standing your ground on certain positions you're taking is that there's always the chance that you could be wrong. And I remember when I was younger and I was growing up and I was watching these sports shows, whenever I heard someone make a prediction and it ended up being wrong, I would always just go, ha! This guy, look at this guy, look how wrong he is. So stupid, so stupid. And then as I got older and I started to get more into the sports media side of things and I started to make predictions myself, I saw there were some times I was right and there were times where I was wrong. And I realized the kind of position some of these guys are in. Sometimes you only have, you're going off of only what you know. You're only going off of what you've seen. And if a player proves you wrong, they prove you wrong. And you just kind of have to, eat your crow. Take a bow, or pat him on the back, say, good job. Okay, my bad. Yeah, I was wrong. And I think that's kind of the position I'm in right now. Going into the season, one of the quarterbacks I have scrutinized the most is Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. And the reason why I have scrutinized him so much is because over his first 2 years in the NFL, even though in his second year he took his team to the playoffs and everything, I still thought Josh Allen was one of the worst, if not the worst quarterback in the NFL. He was never topping 4,000 yards. Wasn't topping 4,000 yards. He hadn't thrown 300 yards in a game yet. He had yet to complete over 60% of his passes in a season. His touchdown to turnover ratio wasn't great. He was a fumble machine. When it came to his percentage of accurate throws, he was always near the bottom of the league, especially on deep passes. He was legitimately at the bottom of the league. And what I had to go off of was what I had seen of him. When it came to some of his college tape, and obviously what I had seen of him in Buffalo, coming into the season, I said to myself, I'm like, I don't understand why people think the Bills are just going to run away with this. With the AFC East. I don't care if Bill Belichick lost Tom Brady. I don't care if the Jets have literally nothing around Sam Darnold but Mekhi Becton. I don't care if Miami's rebuilding. Sure, you could maybe say the Buffalo Bills are the second best team in the AFC East. But why do people think they're just going to run away with this? Josh Allen is still their quarterback. Contact me when he completes over 60% of his passes. I'm not even going to go 65 or something like that. Just contact me when he completes over 60. And I think Josh Allen, he has I don't necessarily think he's heard me or he's heard my criticism, but I definitely believe he has heard the criticism of people across the sports media, because so far this season, Josh Allen has been a stud. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this, it's not like he's faced real tough competition. He faced the Jets and Miami. Woohoo. Woo. When it comes to an easier 2-game schedule, is there anyone who's had an easier 2 games than him? Miami and the New York Jets. We saw what the Jets were week 1, and we've seen what Miami is. And even though Fitzpatrick has these flurries where all of a sudden he's Fitzmagic, there's always the chance he's going to turn back into Fitztragic. And again, that Miami defense isn't that great. But in 2 games to start the season, Josh Allen has thrown 300 yards and 400 yards. In his first 2 years in the league, he had never topped 300. He's now topped 300 and 400 in back-to-back weeks. He has 6 touchdowns to no interceptions, has a 122.9 quarterback rating, 29 yards. He has been phenomenal to open the season. Now, he's going to get a real tough test coming up because he's going to go against the Rams, and the Rams' defense is allowing one of the worst passer ratings in the league. And I don't think a lot of people know that. Outside of Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, there aren't many pieces on that defense that you know, but their secondary is really good. And their defensive line is solid, especially with Aaron Donald there. I think Aaron Donald, he's the majority of their defensive line and of their pass rush. But Brockers is a solid piece. Floyd is a solid piece. They're good complementary pieces around Aaron Donald. But all in all, the pass rush is Aaron Donald or bust. But the defense is performing really, really well. And the Rams offense is kind of back to doing Rams offense style things. The creativity is back. They don't have Todd Gurley to force giving the ball to or anything like that. No more Brandon Cooks. It's now Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and they got that rookie, Van Jefferson, I think he's a rookie, who looks really, really good. Tyler Higbee has taken over as the starting tight end over Gerald Everett, and he has really emerged. And I think Josh Allen, he's going to have to really keep up with the Rams offense. I think the Bills defense will be able to slow down the Rams offense for at least a bit. For at least a bit, they will slow them down and might be able to force a few punts. The question's going to be, can Josh Allen actually take advantage of the defense when he's on the field? Can he keep his own offense on the field? I think that's going to be a test. But before we get into any of the questioning of Josh Allen, let me go ahead and give him credit. His Pro Football Focus grade this year is a career high with 72.8. He's basically kind of smack dab in the middle of the league. He's closer to I think he's closer to the middle than he is the bottom, which for his career he has always been either near the bottom or at the very bottom. He has made a significant improvement this season. On play action, he is first in completions, he's first in yards, he's first in touchdown passes. On his catchable pass rate on 10-yard throws, last year, 56%. That was 31st in the league. This year, 77%, which is 5th in the league. At least so far this season, he has improved on his accuracy, and that big acquisition of Stephon Diggs has seemed to work. It seems to be exactly what the doctor ordered. And this is again that thing of, you look at Baker Mayfield, and you look at Sam Darnold, and you look at Josh Rosen, you look at these other quarterbacks who were supposed to be better than him, they were better in college, they were better throwers, they were more accurate. And yet you look and you see it's Josh Allen who looks the most impressive out of all of them, because he went to a place where they had the coaching staff in place, they had a culture they were trying to set, that it wasn't surrounded in chaos, and Josh Allen has been able to flourish, whereas Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen have done nothing but struggle at the beginning of their careers. And the other quarterback in that draft, Lamar Jackson, he was just the MVP last year. And I don't know if Josh Allen will ever be the MVP. Maybe one day he could be. He is big, he is strong, he does have the arm. He could maybe one day get to that point. At the moment, I don't think he's close to it. But he has made a significant improvement. The rest of their schedule, though, is going to be a lot tougher. Keep in mind, this is Miami and the Jets he's faced so far. On top of the Rams he faces next. He has games against Seattle, against Pittsburgh, and this is Pittsburgh with Big Ben. Not Mason Rudolph. This is Pittsburgh with Big Ben. The Chiefs, Titans, Chargers, 49ers, Patriots twice. This season could flip around. This season really could flip around. Against Seattle, I would say he's going to lose that game. The Steelers, that defense, and the fact that it's Big Ben on the other side, I'd say they're probably going to lose that game. The Chiefs, probably a loss. The Titans, toss-up. The Chargers, that defense, the kind of pressure they can generate, the secondary, I'd say probably a loss. I think, once again, Buffalo could probably end up finishing 10-6, maybe 11-5. But I think they look like a real team. They do. At least in the first 2 weeks of the season, Josh Allen looks like the most improved player in the NFL. And I gotta give it to him. Because I criticized him heavily going in. At the moment, I cannot criticize him. He has had some bad overthrows at times. I know he just drastically overthrew a receiver in the end zone against the Jets. But I gotta give it to the kid. He looks good, and Buffalo right now kind of looks like they can just rub it in everybody's faces, because a lot of people gave them a lot of flack for drafting Josh Allen. and not taking somebody else. But right now it looks like it was the right decision. This did start making me think, though. And it started making me think about this year's crop of rookie quarterbacks. Because if you go back to Josh Allen's draft, when it came to Baker and Darnold and Rosen and Lamar and Allen, the only quarterback there that started week 1 was Sam Darnold. Every other quarterback was on the bench, and the team said their hope is that they don't see the field. They need more work. The hope is they don't see the field. They all ended up starting, I think, at least 8 games. I can't remember exactly what Lamar started, 7 or 8 games. But the point is they all ended up starting basically at least half the season. For Rosen, I think he started every game except for 1. For Baker, I think he started every game except for, except for 3. I mean, in Darnold, he got hurt eventually in the season, but he was the week 1 starter. Allen, he started very early. And you see how these quarterbacks have gone on. Lamar's had success. Allen's had success. Darnold, he has had some success, but I think this is more a product of the coaching staff and what's around him. Rosen, he was just kind of given up on, and Baker has just had coach after coach after coach. I look at the rookie quarterbacks this year, and I look at Burrow and what he's doing. And I see Herbert come out knowing he was going to be starting only 5 minutes prior to the game and almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Throw 300 yards, a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, a really, really bad pick. But, it's a rookie mistake. He made it. And I just think to myself, Miami, Chargers, you guys might as well just start these kids. You might as well start them. Why not just start them? Miami, what do you really have to lose? If you believe in your culture, and you believe in your coaching staff, and you believe in your ability to coach these kids up, why not just start them? Josh Allen, I don't think he was pro-ready at all when he started. But you look at him now as compared to his rookie year, he looks miles ahead. He looks miles better. You might as well start the kid, right? Look at Joe Burrow and what he's doing with the Bengals. With that roster. He's competitive. He's got fight. This team actually looks like it could upset some people. You look at Herbert. He didn't know he was starting until 5 minutes before the game. And then he went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and almost beat them. And maybe if he didn't make that costly interception, maybe he could have beaten them. And when it comes to Tua, I get there is an injury concern, but by all accounts, the team has said that he's healthy, he's good to go, he is the backup quarterback on the roster. Why not go ahead and just throw him in? Why not? What are you waiting for? The best experience is in-game experience. You can learn by sitting on the sideline. I get it. You can learn. You can learn from sitting on the sideline. I get it. It's happened before. Patrick Mahomes learned by sitting on the sideline. Lamar Jackson, it probably really helped he didn't start the full season. He got to watch it for a bit. Jordan Love, I think he's in a good situation as well. Obviously his is a bit different because at least in Tua's situation, he's actually the backup. Jordan Love is the third stringer. He couldn't even beat out their backup. And again, I don't even remember the name of their backup. I have no idea who it is. It's some guy. It's some guy that Jordan Love couldn't beat out, which I think is more concerning for the Packers in that draft pick of theirs. Especially because you see how Aaron Rodgers is performing. He's performing great. This team still has Super Bowl aspirations. A team like the Chargers, I think they have Super Bowl aspirations, or at least playoff aspirations. But is Taylor the guy? If you're going to play the style of offense that you do, I don't know if Taylor is the guy. I think that the style of offense it seems that the Chargers want to play is more suitable to Herbert. And again, 5 minutes. He had to prepare to be the starter. And he went out there and he balled. I don't know. I'm just saying. It might be the days of sitting younger quarterbacks, not starting quarterbacks for a season, I just don't think that's viable anymore. The best experience is just throwing them in there and letting them play. Now, obviously, if you literally can't protect them, if your offensive line is actually straight garbage. I remember Marcus Mariota's rookie year that Tennessee would not play him against the Texans. And the reason why is because their offensive line legitimately couldn't handle the Texans' defensive line. J.J. Watt was still in his prime. They had Jadeveon Clowney. He was in and out of the lineup, though. Whitney Merciless was there and was wreaking havoc. They literally couldn't handle their defensive line, and they wouldn't play Mariota. But if you're just facing, like, Oakland, who doesn't really have a pass rush, if you're just facing the Bengals, who don't really have a pass rush, why don't you just throw the kid in? Let Tua start. Chargers, make a decision. If you're gonna start Taylor, then play the style of football you should play on offense. If you still want to play this Phillip Rivers style of play, start Herbert. Look at Burrow. Look at Mahomes. Look at everyone from Josh Allen's draft, including Josh Allen. Look at all these guys. Look at Carson Wentz. Look at Jared Goff. Look at Dak Prescott. Look at these guys who started their rookie years. And look at where they are now. I don't know. In my mind, the days of sitting younger quarterbacks, especially when you draft them in the first round, when you draft them high in the first round, I don't know. I just don't know how viable it is for them to just not not see the field anymore. I don't know. And I think we got to start talking about the Eagles here, because Carson Wentz has been hot garbage this season, and I don't believe it's all his fault. I really do believe his offensive line is not good. But at the same time, I feel like he's trying to do so much that he's just turning the ball over, and he's not helping his team win. And they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round, and while I don't think they drafted Jalen Hurts to be the successor to Carson Wentz, I really do believe they more see him as just he's a developmental guy, keep him there for a few years. If he sees the field, he sees the field, and eventually they might trade him. Or in the event of a Carson Wentz injury, they have this guy there. But Carson Wentz has looked bad, and he's not helping his team win. And there are some people, especially in Philadelphia, did you hear they are piping in crowd noise. The crowd noise booed Carson Wentz off the field. The crowd noise was so loud. I mean, they booed Carson Wentz off the field, and fans weren't even there. It has not been a good start for the Eagles so far. I'm not saying this is the end of their season, but They have not looked good. Their offensive line injuries have absolutely killed this team, and it seems like they have kind of ruined the way Wentz is playing, at least so far this year. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk about, speaking of 0-2 teams, which 0-2 team right now in the NFL do I believe has the best chance of flipping their season and making the playoffs? That coming up next.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about some Josh Allen. At the moment, yes, I am eating crow. At the moment, Josh Allen looks really, really good, and he looks so much better than he did his previous 2 years. Stephon Diggs seems to be just what the doctor ordered and has seemed to have really improved Josh Allen, especially on deep passes. His accuracy has improved drastically, while last year on 10-yard throws, he was ranked 31st in the percentage of those passes being catchable. This year, he ranks 5th. He has drastically improved. Now, we will see what he does against the Rams, which is a real team with a real offense and a real defense, and we will see what he does after that, because he does have some really tough games. But sometimes he doesn't even have to win. Against the Rams, he doesn't even have to beat them. It's just about, does he look the way he has against the Jets and Miami? If he can look like that against the Rams, maybe he has a turnover or two, but if he can mainly look like that, I think it's safe to say the Bills have found their guy. Josh Allen is getting better, and he will be in line at some point in time in the future for a big extension. At the moment, I have to give it up to Josh Allen. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into some NFL history. So on Pro Football Reference, they talk about 0-2 teams. From 2002 to 2020, 149 teams started the year 0-2. The average finish of those teams is 6-10. 16, which is 10.7% of those teams, made the playoffs. Only one of them were league champions. The best finish ever for any of these teams was 12-4. 2 teams have gotten it, the most recent team being the 2013 Panthers. The worst team was 0-16. That's 2 teams. Most recent was the 2017 Browns. The last 2 teams to start 0-2 and to end the season actually getting into the playoffs were the 2018 Seahawks and the 2018 Texans. Both those teams made NFL history. I don't know if it had ever been done before, but both of those teams managed to make the playoffs after starting 0-2. Usually doesn't happen. This year, we have a bunch of teams that have started the year 0-2. To name all of them, let's get into it quickly. Texans, Panthers, Vikings, Falcons, Giants, Eagles, Dolphins, Jets, Broncos, Bengals, Lions. The only division, keep this in mind, where every single team in the division has at least won one game is the NFC West. The toughest division in football, and I believe this year is going to have the MVP in it. The NFC West is going to be really difficult. These teams are going to beat up on each other. They're going to beat up a lot of other teams, and I think there's a very good chance all of these teams finish above 500. I don't know if it's possible to get 4 teams from one division in the playoffs, but if there's any division I think that would almost deserve it, it would be the NFC West. But looking at all these teams, there's a few of the teams I can instantly write off and say they are not going to make the playoffs. We can go ahead and write off the Jets, and the Dolphins, and the Lions, and the Bengals. I give up on the Falcons. The Falcons, let me compose myself. The Falcons are such a disappointment. I don't want to talk about them too much because I'm going to talk about that coming up in the next topic, along with some Dak Prescott from the game Falcons at Cowboys. The Falcons, I just give up on them. They have not been the same since the Super Bowl. It's pathetic. The Giants, no. The Broncos, no. Eagles, no. Panthers, no. If I really had to narrow it down to 2 teams, which teams I think have the best chance to actually make the playoffs from 0-2, I would say the Vikings and the Texans. And if you really put me on the spot and ask me which team is most likely to do it, I would have to tell you it is the Texans. Now, some people might push back on me and they might say the Eagles, because look at what the Eagles did last year. Did you see what they did? They were working with nothing. All their receivers were gone, and their running backs were gone. Carson Wentz was throwing to a former college quarterback, and his running back was a rookie in Miles Sanders. Did you see what he did? I did, and I thought it was very, very impressive. But let's just look at the next 6 games for the Eagles, right? Their next game is against the Bengals. I'm going to say that's a toss-up. I am not going to sit here and say that the Eagles are going to win that game, and if I really had to pick based off of what I have seen right now, I will take the Bengals to win that game. The Bengals have looked more impressive in their first 2 games than the Eagles have, and I don't think that's disputable. I will take the Bengals to win that game. Then they take on the Niners. I don't care about the injuries to Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas when it comes to this game. I still think that Niners defense is better, and if Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, I guess that's the caveat. If he's healthy, I will take the Niners to win that game. Then they take on the Steelers. This is with Big Ben, and with that defensive front that is absolutely destroying people. Have you seen the Eagles' offensive line? Did you see it against Washington? That's another loss. So right there, they are now 0-5. Then they take on the Ravens. 0-6. And then they take on the Giants. Okay, 1-6. And then it's the Cowboys. I don't know, it's a toss-up. I would probably go ahead and say that's 1-7. The Eagles are done. They're absolutely done. And then you look at the Vikings schedule, for anyone who wants to vouch for the Vikings. They face the Titans next. I will say that's a loss. So 0-3. Then they take on the Texans. 0-4. They then take on Seattle. I'm going to say 0-5. Then they take on the Falcons. You know what? I'll give it to you. They're going to win that game. So they're going to be 1-5. And then they take on the Packers. 1-6. And then they take on the Lions. 2-6. I think the Vikings are done. I don't think the Vikings have it. But I looked at the Texans schedule. And I think about Deshaun Watson and the playmaker that he is. And I think about the pieces that they still have on defense, with J.J. Watt still being a very, very productive player, with them having good linebackers. Their secondary is suspect, but I love Deshaun Watson. I know that for a fact that their division has kind of been perpetually, around 500, 10-6, 9-7, 8. I mean, no team ever really runs away with it. And historically, over these last few years, the Texans have dominated the division. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why I pushed back against people saying Bill O'Brien was such a bad head coach, is because look at the amount of times he's won his division. I mean, he's won it, every single year of his career other than 1 year? He's only had a losing record 1 year. I don't understand it, but that's what I think is, even though Tennessee looks good, I look at the Jags and I think they're a team that's going to play hard. Their offense is something to worry about, but their defense I don't think is very good. Henderson, though, looks like a really good rookie. Pro Football Focus said he's the best rookie cornerback they have seen since Marshawn Lattimore, and obviously Lattimore is great. So, we'll see how that all shapes up, and then it's the Colts. And it kind of seems like it's all going to depend on what game you get from Phillip Rivers. Is it the game where he's on point, or is it the game where he's a turnover machine? You never really know. His game against Jacksonville was one thing, and then you saw what they did to the Vikings. They absolutely dominated. So I think it just kind of depends. But we're going to go through the Texans' entire schedule, the rest of their remaining schedule, and I'm going to tell you what games they're going to win and what games they're going to lose. So their next game is against the Steelers. They're going to lose that game. The Steelers' defensive front is too good. They're going to wreak havoc, and they blitz a lot. I think among NFL defenses, I believe, if I saw this correctly, Next Gen Stats shows that they blitz the most. Not only do they generate a great deal of pressure by themselves, but they blitz a lot. I think Deshaun Watson's going to be running for his life. So I'm going to take them to lose that game. And people are going to start panicking, and they're going to say, oh my god, they're 0-3. I believe Deshaun Watson and this team will keep their heads in it, and they won't give up. They then take on the Vikings. I think they're going to beat the Vikings. I think J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless and that defense will be able to put enough pressure on Kirk to win that game. So they'll be 1-3. Then they take on the Jags. I think that's 2-3. They then take on the Titans. I'll give them a loss there. They seem to split it quite often. At least historically, they seem to kind of split it. But I'm going to go ahead and say that the Texans will lose that game to the Titans. So I have them then at 2-4. They then take on the Packers. I'll give them 2-5. Then they take on the Jags, Browns. I'll give them 2 wins there. So, what is that? 4-5. They're then going to take on the Patriots. Now, the Patriots game is going to be really, really interesting. Deshaun Watson has performed overall very, very well against Bill Belichick. This is arguably the weakest defense that he has had. Again, no DeAndre Hopkins, but simply because of Deshaun Watson's playmaking ability, I think it's going to be a show between he and Cam Newton, but I'm going to take them to beat the Patriots. So there, I have them at 5-5. They then take on the Lions. Easy win. 6-5. They then take on the Colts and then the Bears. I'm going to give them 2 losses there. So now they're going to be sitting here at 5-7. Or what is that? No, I'm sorry, 6-7. They then take on the Colts, the Bengals, and the Titans to close off the season. I think they're going to win all 3 games to round up to 9-7. Now, with saying that, I think there's a really good chance that I'm wrong. There's a really good chance that the Texans do not do this. There's a great chance that the Texans don't make it to the playoffs. I think there's a great chance that there's not a single 0-2 team to actually make the playoffs. Last year, not a single 0-2 team made the playoffs. Last time it happened was 2018, when 2 teams did it, and that was kind of like unheard of. Last year, none of them did. I think this year, because of COVID, because of no training camp, no team scrimmages, no preseason, the fact that the Texans, especially a team like the Texans, no number 1 receiver really, your offensive line is in shambles. You look at the Vikings, their offensive line is in shambles, and there's no Diggs, and it's just kind of a mess over there, and the Eagles are a mess, and all these teams are just a hot mess. I think there's a real chance there's not a single 0-2 team that actually makes the playoffs. It's a real possibility. And if it doesn't happen, it's just kind of like, okay, whatever. This was the year where you needed to get off to a good start. And if it didn't happen for you, tough squad. Because you look at teams like the Seahawks. The only thing that's going to hold them back, really, is injury. It's the same thing with a team like the Rams. I think the only thing that's going to hold them back is injury. The Niners, the thing that at the moment I believe is holding them back and that will continue to hold them back is the injuries. Baltimore, it's only going to be injuries. The Chiefs, it's only going to be injuries. Some of these teams you cannot afford to fall behind, but yet they have. Some of these teams are 1-1, like the Chargers, or like the Patriots, or like the Cowboys. I think these teams have a real shot to just kind of go up from here. To finish maybe around 10-6, 11-5. To be competitive, I think they're better than their record actually says that they are. And it's, like, I think the Patriots, right? I think the Patriots, realistically, they're a 2-0 team. It's just unfortunate they came to within a 1 yard of beating the Seahawks, and they would have beaten the Seahawks right there, but they just didn't. So, like, I think that team is worth being 2-0. I think the Patriots are better than being 1-1. And kind of speaking of that, isn't it interesting how the death nail for teams is 0-2. There's 16 games, and yet for whatever reason, teams that are 0-2 just collapse, and the majority of them don't go on to do anything. I think that's really interesting. I would like to kind of know what goes on in the psyche of a team when you fall to 0-2. Because when I've listened to players talk about how when you know in the season what you really are, I've kind of heard a consensus opinion is around week 5, week 6. Is when you kind of, or not maybe not week 5, week 6, but like game 5, game 6 is when you really kind of know what you are. And there are some players where you just kind of see it in practice. You see it in the offseason. You can even see it during the training camp. You see some of the guys who are maybe projected to be starters, and you just look at them and go, oh dear God, they should not be starting. But it seems to be like week 5, week 6 when teams seem to know what they really are, and yet for whatever reason, 0-2 is like the death nail. If you fall to 0-2, for most teams, your season is over. I think it's really interesting. I would like to kind of know what the psychology behind all that is. But if I had to take any team this year to bounce back from 0-2 and to make the playoffs, I would have to say it is the Houston Texans, really for no other reason other than this. One, their schedule isn't exactly murderer's row, and number 2, because I think Deshaun Watson is special. I think he's a special playmaker. I think he's got those intangibles like a Russell Wilson. He can work with less and do more. You would like to surround him with more so he doesn't have to do so much, but he can do it. I think that he can upset some teams. He'll keep plays alive that shouldn't be kept alive. And ultimately, I just think it's kind of Deshaun Watson or bust. Will Fuller and Kenny Stills and Brandon Cooks, they're all nice receivers. A lot of them haven't shown the ability to stay healthy. Hopkins really was the guy there. I like Laramie Tunsil. I think there's parts of their offensive line that are good, or that at least have potential to be good. But they've had a rough 2 games, right? They opened the season against the Chiefs and then Baltimore. They're another team where their first 2 games have been really, really difficult. So maybe don't judge them off these games too harshly. But the fact of the matter is the record is the record. The history of the record is the history of the record. And I guess just if there was any team I'd have to take to make the playoffs, I'm going to say it's the Texans. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk some Falcons, Cowboys, talk about the game. I want to talk about the Falcons. I want to talk about how Dak is kind of standing with his team and how I believe this season is going to go for Dak. And my final topic of the day, we're going to do an overview of the Saints and the Raiders because Brees looks old. And I think it could spell some trouble for the Saints moving forward. That coming up later.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about which 0-2 team I believe is most likely to flip their season and end up making the playoffs. I think it's going to be the Texans, but at the same time, I would not be surprised if no 0-2 team does end up making the playoffs because of the way that this season is. The sheer amount of the limited amount of practices that they've had, the wonkiness of this year, and then the fact that no 0-2 team made the playoffs last year. Last time they did it was 2018. For whatever reason, 0-2 was a death sentence, even though it's only 2 games out of a 16-game schedule. For whatever reason, 0-2 is basically a nail in the coffin. I think if any team is going to do it, it will be the Texans for 2 reasons. One is because of Deshaun Watson, and because I think he's special. And number 2 is because their schedule is a bit more favorable. Again, I think the Eagles, they have a really tough schedule. The Vikings, I just think their defense is too bad. And I'm not saying that the Texans' defense is any more special, but when it comes down to a matchup between Kirk Cousins and Deshaun Watson, I just like Deshaun Watson's playmaking ability. I've seen him get out of spots before. The playoff game against the Bills, right? The Bills have him dead to rights in a sack. 2 players had him, and he spun out of it, and they end up winning the game. So I have faith in Deshaun Watson. I think the schedule plays out a bit more favorably to them, and I think if any team is going to do it, it will be the Texans. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into this. So the Falcons and the Cowboys just played a game, and with this topic, I want to not only do a little bit of a recap of the game, but I want to talk about the Falcons individually and then Dak. So with the game, I'm sitting down. I didn't really watch the game. I was watching other games I thought were more important. But I'm sitting down and I'm looking at updates, and I see, oh, okay, so the Falcons are ahead. Okay, yeah, no, they're ahead. They're ahead by 2. And, okay. The Cowboys are going to need an onside kick. Oh, okay, well, Falcons are going to win that game. I guess the Cowboys are going to drop to 0-2. This does not look good for Dak. And then all of a sudden that my timeline starts blowing up on Twitter. And everyone's tweeting, oh my god, the Falcons choked. And I go and I look at this replay and I see that they kicked the onside kick and then the Falcons players just watched it. The Falcons players literally just watched it roll. And then the Cowboys players ran up to it and they watched it with them. And so you have these two teams staring at the ball rolling. And then it's Zuerlein, the kicker, that jumps onto the football. How does that happen? And then to go ahead and add a little bit more insult to injury, Greg Zuerlein then nails a long field goal, and they win the game. And the Falcons, they had them dead to right. They could have sent the Cowboys to 0-2. The Falcons got their first win of the season, and they just blew it. There's a reason why I said the Falcons are absolutely not going to make the playoffs this year. Even though they're 0-2, and there is always the possibility there's 14 more games, there's no way in hell this team is going to do anything this year. And I mean, not to mention, their next two games is against the Bears and the Packers. I think they're going to lose both of those games. They'll probably beat the Panthers. They'll probably beat the Vikings, the Lions. They face the Panthers again, the Broncos. I mean, they have a chance, I would say. But here's the thing. I don't know how much better a team like the Cowboys is than the Panthers. I don't know how much better a team like the Cowboys is than the Vikings. I really don't. And we saw them lose. The Falcons seem to find just different ways to lose games. Keep in mind, against Seattle, they had 3 receivers with 9 catches and 100 yards. 3 receivers, all with very similar stat lines. They lost the game. And then against the Cowboys, all you have to do is fall on the football before it gets to the 10 yards, and you're done. That's all you have to do. Onside kicks, the chances of you recovering onside kicks these days is between slim and none. And Slim left the building a long time ago. And they still lost. Dan Quinn. I think this is kind of that same thing. You know, I talk about Adam Gase with the Jets. What is the purpose of keeping Dan Quinn? Dan Quinn, his first 3 years with the Falcons, I thought he did a really good job. His first 3 years of the Falcons, he what was he? I don't know what his overall record was, but he comes to the Falcons in 2015. They go 8-8. They started off that year really good. I think they were like 5-0, but then they ended 8-8. They really collapsed at the end of the year. The next year, they go 11-5. They go to the Super Bowl. They have the number 1 offense in the league. It is one of the most scary offenses of all time when it came to their efficiency, the amount of touchdowns they scored on their drives. They didn't just settle for field goals, and even if they did settle for a field goal, Matt Bryant was playing out of his mind, and that year you can make a case was probably the best kicker in the league. They ended up losing the Super Bowl. A lot of people blame Kyle Shanahan for it. Some people blame Matt Ryan for it. Some people blame the Falcons defense because it wasn't that great. And then the next year, they go 10-6, and they lost in the divisional round. And then from that moment on, they have been 7-9, 7-9, and I would probably say once again this season, they'll probably be 7-9. The Falcons are just blah. There's no draw to the team. There's nothing fascinating about the team anymore. There's no draw there. Kyle Shanahan's gone. The only draw to the team, if anything, is Julio Jones. And even then, there's games where Julio Jones gets like a target, gets like a catch. There's these games where it just seems like Julio Jones has completely fallen out of the game plan, and it's usually because the defense decides to double him, and they put all their attention to him, because if they don't, he will destroy your defense, hence the game against Carolina where he went for 300 yards against Bradbury. It's just... And I think it's really unfortunate because the thing with Atlanta is it's not like they've been bereft of talent. They have had talent on the team, and if you go to Matt Ryan, and you go to his career, Matt Ryan... for the better part of a decade, has been one of the best quarterbacks from a pure passing perspective in the NFL. And if you look at him since 2015, and you look at his Pro Football Focus grades, and you see how he has ranked among all other quarterbacks, he has been phenomenal. And yet, you look at the team's success, there's little to nothing to show for it. That Super Bowl year, I really feel like, that was Matt Ryan's chance. That Super Bowl year, that was Matt Ryan's chance to etch himself in NFL history, to, etch a place in him, maybe for the Hall of Fame, and I think it's just gone. And I don't think he's going to get back to it. Right now, Matt Ryan is closer to the end of his career than the beginning. And I think, Atlanta, at some point in time here, I don't know if they will be bad enough to get a super high draft pick. They usually win at least more than 6 games. It appears they usually kind of try to hang around 500. That doesn't usually get you the number 1 overall pick or a top 5 pick. So I don't know how Atlanta's going to fall in this draft, but I would really think at some point in time here soon, looking at getting a replacement for him. Because we've seen some of these guys, they try to hang around. They say, I can play until I'm this old. I can play until I'm this old. Drew Brees thought the same thing. Look at how Drew Brees is playing this year. It doesn't look great. Certain guys hit the wall. And I'm not saying Matt Ryan has hit the wall. I don't believe he has. But maybe even just from a draw perspective, just to start over, you might look for a new guy. And when it comes down to Dan Quinn, look, sometimes players make mistakes, but to not know the rules of the onside kick. I think Julio Jones was on the damn field. I think he's on the hands team. At least I believe he is. For a team to not know the onside kick rules while the other team does is shameful. That is a massive coaching error, and Dan Quinn should be fired immediately for that blunder. I don't think there's any point in keeping Dan Quinn. The team isn't trending in the right direction. They're literally staying stagnant. And since their Super Bowl year, their win total has never gone up. It has only gone down. Now it's just staying stagnant at 7-9. And like I said, again this year, I would not be surprised if once again they're like 7-9. And some people might look at that and say, well, hey, look, they're consistent. They just need a few more pieces. I just don't think so. I think for this Falcons regime, this team of the Falcons, I think is kind of over. Matt Ryan has been there. He's been good for the better part of the last decade. He's had talent. Julio Jones, White, Gonzalez, good offensive lines. He's had good talent around him. Hasn't always had the defense, and I think that's another thing with Dan Quinn. His calling card is defense. He came from the Pete Carroll tree. His calling card is defense. And their defense, I think realistically, has only been good for about 1.5 years. It was half of the year during the Super Bowl year. It kind of turned on towards the end of the season, and in the playoffs they became really good. And then it was good the next year when their offense seemed to be the thing that changed because Kyle Shanahan was gone. They had a new play caller, understandable. And it was kind of that thought of, man, if only they had that defense. If only their defense played like that the Super Bowl year. If they did, they probably could have won the damn thing. But they didn't. Now to go into, I guess I'll wrap it up by saying this. This Falcons regime, I think is done. I think they should go ahead and clean house. They should start looking to the future. And I think that maybe you just start with getting a new head coach. If not the quarterback, start with getting a new head coach. I think Dan Quinn, he can probably go back, be someone's defensive coordinator. I'm sure that would be more suitable for him. Or maybe he just needs to go somewhere else. Because I don't think he's done a terrible job with Atlanta. I just don't think he's been that great outside of his first few years there. Since then, now we're going to be going on 3 years of just being average. Of just being and finding dumb ways to lose games. I just think it's time to probably move on for him. As it comes for Dak. Dak, so far this season, has looked like the Dak from last year. But the weird thing about this season, and the weird thing about Dak Prescott and his position with the Cowboys, is I don't know what he has to do to get the contract he wants. Now keep this in mind, right? There were all the reports that were coming out about the contract. There were all these numbers thrown out and the guarantees and the years. What ultimately ended up coming out is Dak wanted a 4-year deal. The Cowboys don't do that. They hand out more than that. They wanted to give him a 5-year deal. But Dak and his representation didn't want it. So ultimately, the Cowboys decided to give him a franchise tag. You look at a guy like Deshaun Watson, who got paid this year. He signed a 4-year deal. I think 4-year deals are going to be something that we see more often. I think more players are going to sign less years that are for less years so that they can hit the market again sooner, or earlier, I guess I should say, so they can hit it again earlier and get a second big deal. The thing with Mahomes is, right, with his 10-year deal, if it actually stays for the whole duration, he will never ever hit the free agency market. Unless something catastrophic happens, he will never ever be a free agent. This contract is his contract. And I guess by age 37, if he's still balling out and he becomes a free agent, then I guess he'll get a chance to go ahead and get another contract. But it's so strange with Dak. This season, he looks like the Dak from last year. I think Pro Football Focus has him ranked as like the 6th best quarterback in the league so far. He's got like 700 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, I think like 4 on the ground. He looks good. But the Cowboys should be 0-2 right now. They should be. Looking at the Seahawks, in which they're going to be 0-3, against the Browns, that's up after the Cowboys, they'll probably win that game, so they'll be like 1-3. Then they face the Giants, and their schedule is kind of easy because they go Giants, Cardinals, Washington, Cowboys, Eagles. So there's probably like, three, maybe even 4 wins out of that? Maybe. I think the Cardinals will be a team that's going to give them real trouble because Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins just looks special. But I think one of my takeaways from that game is the Cowboys' defense has chosen a really, really bad year for Dak Prescott to be bad. I do not like really anything about the Cowboys' defense. Now, they've suffered some injuries. Leighton Vander Esch is out again. Sean Lee isn't playing. Jalen Smith still kind of looks like he's making some of the mistakes he was last year, which is that he's just being too aggressive, and he's not taking his time to really see how things develop. When it comes to their secondary, it's not great, and their pass rush was good for about the first week, when Aldon Smith looked like their best pass rusher. But the man that they actually paid, DeMarcus Lawrence, there is still an APB out for him. And when it comes to the rest of their defensive line, with Aldon Smith, and it's Everson Griffin, whoever, they just do not seem to generate a consistent pass rush. And you watch what the Falcons did. They fumbled the ball, 4 times? They lost 3 of them? It was a terrible, terrible game by the Cowboys. And Mike McCarthy, is this the elite coaching that the Cowboys needed? What is Mike McCarthy doing? I don't understand a lot of the things that the Cowboys have been doing. When it comes to some of the 4th down attempts that they try to go for, fake punts, his clock management and the use of timeout, some of the play calling, I don't understand it. I don't know if this Cowboys team necessarily looks better than the team last year. I don't even necessarily know if their record is going to be that much different. I would maybe assume it is. I would assume they would at least do maybe a bit better, a game or 2 better. I think I had them maybe finishing like 10-6 this season. But they don't look like world beaters. And I just think this season is not going to pan out the way that Dak Prescott specifically wants. I'm on record saying I think after this season, Dak Prescott will not be a Cowboy. I do not believe that Dak Prescott is going to be able to stay on this team. Simply because I just think the relationship is going to be fragmented. What quarterback that has ever been on the franchise tag by the team that drafted them, what quarterback stayed on that team? There's a reason the team franchise tagged you. Is because they like you, but they're not sure they want to get married to you. They're not sure they want to give you that big contract. And again, the Cowboys, they did offer Dak a certain deal, but they weren't to his terms. And obviously, people they talk about, but sacrifice and this and that. And look, at the end of the day, whether or not you agree with it, Dak wanted a certain deal. With Dak wanting that deal, he needs to get certain things done. And it's going to really result in the win column. It's going to result in playoff success. And I just don't think it's going to happen. Dak's been trying to read the market when it came to what Mahomes was going to get and what Deshaun Watson was going to get. And he looks at what Goff got and what Carson Wentz got. And I think that right now, Dak Prescott, he has a very good case to say he is better than both of them. That's another thing I kind of have to change my view on. I'm looking at Carson Wentz right now. He has been complete garbage. And Jared Goff, I think we all kind of know, he is a very big product of Sean McVay and his play calling and what he does for him, and that's fine. It's okay to be a system quarterback. He's really good in Sean McVay's system. But when it comes to just, as a pure quarterback, I would probably say Dak is better. I think Dak has proven that he is just better. But can you look at that game? Can you look at their win against Atlanta? And can you honestly say this team is ready to take off? Can you honestly say that the Cowboys, this is the win that they needed to propel them in the right direction? Because I can't. In my mind, Dallas is 0-2. And that's just the honest truth. In my mind, Dallas is an 0-2 football team that's about to be 0-3, and even though the record is going to show 1-1, I understand that, and it'll show 1-2 in my mind. I don't believe they are not a real 1-1 football team. They got so incredibly lucky. And I guess as for this, how the season is going to end, I just don't believe it's going to end in Dak's favor as it comes to the Cowboys. If his long-term goal was to be a Cowboy, then his bubble's going to get burst. But at the end of the season, he doesn't re-sign with the Cowboys still aren't willing to give him that deal. They might decide to franchise tag him again. They might decide to go ahead and move off of him or maybe trade him. I think there's some other teams out there that would really be interested in him. Again, I want to see what goes on with Buffalo and Josh Allen, because I did say Buffalo could be a team that could make a push to get Dak Prescott, and I think he'd be great over there. But if Josh Allen is doing this, I don't think they need him. I don't think they're going to need Dak. So there's some other teams that could look at him, but nonetheless, watching that Falcons Cowboys game, there were some people that made bets on that game and their hearts were broken, or they were revitalized at the end of that game. Some people broke their TVs. Some people broke down in tears for the right and the wrong reasons. That's NFL for you. That is NFL football. Man, can you believe there are people out there that are boycotting the NFL this year? God. I can't imagine being part of that crowd. Whew. Man, what they're missing out on. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day, we're going to talk about some Saints, Raiders, some takeaways from the game, and Drew Brees. Yeesh. I'll get into that coming up next.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Falcons, Dak Prescott, the Cowboys, takeaways from the games. All in all, my takeaways, the Falcons are hot garbage and will do anything to lose a game. The Cowboys kind of look the same. Not even the coaching necessarily looks better. And I just do not believe this year is going to end with Dak Prescott staying on the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are again kind of going to be a blah team. They might get into the playoffs, but I don't believe they're going to be a playoff contender. Their defense doesn't look the same. Their pass rush doesn't look the same. When it comes to Dak and Zeke, I kind of know what I'm going to get from them. And they have the 3 stud wide receivers, but all in all, we saw that last year. And it garnered them 8-8, and they missed the playoffs. And even though I believe they have a chance to really make the playoffs this year, especially with an extra playoff spot, I just do not believe that they're going to be able to make any noise, actually, if they were to get into the postseason. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this final topic of the day. So, the Raiders and Saints opened up the new Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas, and let me just say, it looks awesome. We have a family friend who recently went to Vegas, drove by the stadium, said it looks incredible. The outside of it just looks wicked. I think they're calling it the Death Star, which is I don't know. It's a cool name, I guess. I wouldn't have gone with Death Star for the Raiders, but nonetheless, it is what it is. But all in all, I thought the Raiders looked really, really good once they actually kind of turned it on. At the beginning of the game, it looked like the Saints were going to make it pretty ugly, pretty early, and then everything just kind of turned on. To talk about the Raiders for a second, Darren Waller. That dude is an absolute stud, and his story is pretty well documented. If you don't know about Darren Waller's story, I definitely think you should look it up. This is a guy who came into the NFL as a wide receiver, but when he was drafted by Baltimore, they wanted to move him to tight end because they saw his speed, they saw his size, and they thought this dude could be a mismatch nightmare. And then he couldn't see the field because he was getting suspended, and then he was out for a year because of drug issues. And eventually, the Ravens, I think they put him on the practice squad. The Raiders grabbed him, and he became their starting tight end. And then he signed a 3-year, $27 million deal, I believe, which at this point is a bargain. And you can see this dude is a mismatch nightmare. He is too fast for linebackers. He's too big for safeties. He is just special. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. The dude is just special, and I'm so happy he's been able to turn himself around. As for the Raiders that game, I didn't think that the offensive line necessarily protected Derek Carr the best that it could have, but Derek Carr, he made some great throws. The running backs were great. Josh Jacobs is an absolute stud, and the Raiders ultimately were able to pull away with a victory. Do I think this is going to mean anything long-term for the Raiders? Look, I think they're trending in the right direction. I still don't like their defense. Their defense is still horrid. Remember, they gave up 30 points to Teddy Bridgewater, and we saw what that offense did to Tampa Bay, which was virtually not much. At least not in my mind. They didn't do too much, but against the Raiders, they scored 30. I think the Raiders are still going to be one of the worst teams in the league. I think their offense, it's kind of like Jacksonville, really. I think the Raiders are a lot like Jacksonville. They have an offense that's going to put up points and that will contend. But their defenses are not good. They have a few players here and there that you like and that you hope can turn into something bigger. But all in all, not a good unit. I still think people are going to be able to put up points. Even the Saints, for their first few drives, were able to put up points. But it was just then all of a sudden the age of Drew Brees really came out. And that's kind of, I guess, how we're going to segue into this. Drew Brees. My God, how old does Drew Brees look? The difference with him this year compared to even just last year, it's like night and day. Drew Brees looks old. Period. Point blank. He looks old. He looked old week 1. He looks old week 2. And some people might want to bring up, well, they didn't have Michael Thomas. Well, they had Michael Thomas against Tampa Bay, and Michael Thomas, what'd he do? Did he come away with like maybe 3 catches? I don't even remember a splash play Michael Thomas made during the game. All I remember is that he got rolled up on at the end of the game because instead of taking knees, Sean Payton wanted to put up points, and Michael Thomas got rolled on and got a high ankle sprain. And he was out this last game. I think he's probably going to be out for the next game. I don't know when he's going to be back, but even when he does come back, he's probably not going to be 100%. There's no way the ankle's just going to be like, it's fixed. So it's kind of Sean Payton's fault on that. But nonetheless, Drew Brees still didn't play good. And Pro Football Focus has been kind of documenting it. And these are some takeaways in their article. They talked about Drew Brees and talked about his performance at the Raiders and talked about some of the decline they're seeing in him. Here's a few notes I made on it. On deep throws that they've said, which is 10 to the 19-yard range, Drew Brees is 12 of 27, which ranks 31st in the league. His accuracy on throws beyond 5 yards, just 5 yards, beyond 5 yards, is 45%, which is down from 56.6%, which is what he averaged from 2017 to 2019. His rate of uncatchable passes has only gone up. Drew Brees, have you seen him try to throw the ball deep? He's got to get a running start for it. You see what he has to do to throw the ball out of bounds now? If he wants to really get rid of the ball, dude has to put everything into it to throw the ball long. And it's really, really weird to me because this offseason especially, with limited practices and limited OTAs, the whole shebang, right? I've talked about it numerous times. With the limited amount of time that Drew Brees has really had to throw the football with everyone, why does his arm look so tired? His arm looks ridiculously tired. From 2017 to 2019 was truly one of the great stretches of Drew Brees' career. Now we're going to go. It wasn't the 3 years that the New Orleans Saints were 7-9. Those were probably some of the best. Those were probably the best years of Drew Brees' careers. That was when he was still really in his prime, and he was still just slinging that football all over the field. And the Saints every single year basically had the number one passing offense. Even then, from 2017 to 2019, their offense was electric, running the football and passing the football. It was a pick your poison kind of deal. What did you want to stop? If you were going to stop their running game, well, Drew Brees was going to throw it all over you. If you wanted to stop Drew Brees, they're going to run it all over you. This year, what do they do well? What do they really do well? They throw the football. It's among the worst in the league. Their passing game is one of the worst in the league. Their run game is okay. You know, it's okay. It's not like the Ravens. It's not the Titans. It's not Green Bay's. It's not the Cowboys. But like it's okay. Kamara, he's a scat back. He runs it and he catches passes. He's arguably the best or the second best running back in the NFL when it comes to pass catching. He's been consistently every single year catching the same amount of balls. Was it 81 catches every single year, something like that? It's ridiculous. He is the definition of consistency. But the Saints, coming into this season, I think I said the Saints were my pick to come out of the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. I didn't say they were going to win it, but I picked them to make it to the Super Bowl. I think I'm probably going to have to change that pick because this team just doesn't look the same. I thought one of the things that might kind of take this team apart was going to be Drew Brees' comments. I said coming into this year, Drew Brees is really going to need to hope he and the Saints have a good season. Because if they don't, people are going, whether it's fair or not, people are going to go back to his comments about Black Lives Matter and the national anthem and how he continued to perpetuate a false narrative saying that it had to do with the troops and it had to do with the flag. Obviously, his teammates came out and spoke out against him. Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Malcolm Jenkins, they all made comments about it. Alvin Kamara. I thought that would be the thing, if anything, people would harp on. I don't know if people are going to necessarily harp on that. Because this isn't a thing of Drew Brees is performing well, but there's locker room tension and they're just not winning these close games, whatever it is. It's flat out, they're just not performing. Drew Brees is just not performing well. And you can go ahead and say, week 1, he's facing Tampa Bay. It is week 1. Tampa Bay's a division rival. They're always going to play them tough. Todd Bowles is a really good defensive coordinator. The Saints offensive line isn't exactly the same. You can say all that. And especially against the Raiders. The Raiders are another team that doesn't really have a good pass rush. They pressured Drew Brees, I think this is on 30% of his dropbacks. He was pressured. And that was the same for Derek Carr. And I think most people would say that the Saints, particularly, have a far, far better pass rush than the Raiders do. Cam Jordan, Davenport, Sheldon Rankins, Hendrickson. They got some pass rushers. They got some dudes on that defensive line that can consistently put pressure on the quarterback. Or at least are above average. For the Raiders, who do they really have? I know they had a rookie last year that was pretty good, but it's kind of that comparison thing when it comes to him as compared to a guy like Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa was head and shoulders a better pass rusher. They had similar sack numbers, so you had some people in the Raiders fan base saying, "Oh, he's just as good as Nick Bosa. Look at the sacks." No. They're not. Do not just pay attention to sacks. Remember this. I think I did a whole talk about this. Do not just pay attention to sacks. Those are not the end-all be-all. Nick Bosa, one of the best defensive ends in the league. Now, of course, he's out for the year, which is very, very unfortunate. But, so you look at that and you say, okay, so the Saints' offensive line is not the same. They are now allowing Drew Brees to be even more pressured. Drew Brees has never been a mobile guy, and even when he does try to run, looks like Tom Brady out there trying to run. It is not pretty. It looks awkward. It's all dangly. He doesn't look athletic. And on top of that, his reaction timing is slowing down. Pro Football Focus also noted that on open throws, there are many times where defenses are giving him open guys. Defenses will leave a guy open. And Drew Brees isn't taking it anymore. And Drew Brees used to be a guy where he will just surgically dissect you. Whatever open guy you give him, Drew Brees for the most part would throw it to him. And they're saying that Drew Brees is starting to skip over those guys. And he's starting to look for other people. He's looking for longer passes. Now, whether or not that has to do with his reaction timing, I have no idea. But there is decline in Drew Brees. And Brett Favre recently made some comments and he talked about it, and he said that when it comes to guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees, that they can still be successful in this league, that it's not like the league has changed so much to the point where they can't be effective. If you just let them play their game and you protect them, then they will be fine. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. The league is changing to the mobile quarterback. If you take a look, and you look at the quarterbacks right now that are 2-0, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Russell Wilson, it's Aaron Rodgers, it's Mahomes, Ryan Tannehill, Mitch Trubisky. And what do these guys all have in common? They're not all equally as good as each other, but what do they all have in common? And that's not all the 2-0 quarterbacks, there's more, I'm just naming a few of them. They're all mobile. Now, Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, those are three of the best throwers in the NFL when it comes to throwing from the pocket or on the run, to their left, to the right, out of play action, bootleg, doesn't matter. But the thing that they can all do is they can tuck it and they can run it when they need to. And that is what makes them so dangerous. It is a pick your poison. Even Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill was once upon a time a wide receiver. He can run. If there was any question about Ryan Tannehill early in his career, it was about, did he make the right decision being a quarterback? Was he actually good enough? Could he throw it? Oh, no, he can throw it good enough. And because of his legs, he is dangerous, because if you only play the pass, if you go man to man and you play the pass, he will gash you with his legs. The game has slowly moved away from the pocket quarterback. And I'm not saying they can't be successful. You look at Tom Brady so far this season, I think he's the third highest graded quarterback in the NFL right now by Pro Football Focus. They can still play. They can still play. The thing is, when protection isn't good for them, we saw what happened when protection wasn't good for Phillip Rivers. He can't extend the play, so what's he do? he gets sacked and he fumbles it, or he just throws it up somewhere and it's an interception. Obviously now with Drew Brees, he's under pressure, he's not able to get the ball out in time, he's throwing a pick, or it's just going to fall incomplete, it's just somewhere else, it's not pretty football. And the same thing has happened to Tom Brady. When he hasn't had good protection, let's just go with when he faced Denver a few years ago when Denver went to the Super Bowl. Did you see what the defense did to Tom Brady? The offensive line couldn't protect him. They hit him all game long, and Tom Brady looked very, very average to below average. When you can't run, when you can't get away from these kinds of, from defenses like that, when you can't extend the play and help your offensive line out, there's not much you can do. That's just a fact. But can you still play? Yes. In college, there will always be those pocket passers. And can they be successful in this NFL? Yes. The thing is, they need more to help them. They just need more than a mobile quarterback. Mobile quarterbacks do not always need the best offensive lines. You'd like to give them the best offensive line, but they don't always need it because of the fact that they can run. Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, he can move, he is mobile, he's not like Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson mobile, but he's mobile enough. And we saw what happened under Jeff Fisher when Jeff Fisher didn't ever try to move him around, more tried to play him as a pure pocket quarterback. Jared Goff looked awful, but granted, everyone looked awful under Jeff Fisher. Here, let me give you guys an example from the NBA. In the NBA nowadays, if you're a center, and you can't shoot the three, if you can't score, if you're not really an offensive threat, you either need to be a defensive nightmare, Rudy Gobert, Andre Drummond, you either need to be a defensive nightmare, or you are unplayable. When you do see the court, you see it in very, very short bursts. It's garbage time. It's when your team is way ahead. It's just to spell the starter for a little bit. You're unplayable if you can't shoot the three, and if you don't have some semblance of a mid-range game, post-game, whatever. You either need to be great on defense or you're unplayable. The NBA has moved away from the old school center. In the NFL, they have moved away from the old school quarterback. While they can still be effective, there is a more efficient way to play. There's a better way to play. And I gotta be honest, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, I think at this point they would be better for the Saints. The problem is, I don't think the Saints would ever bench Drew Brees. As long as he's on the team and he doesn't actually retire himself, I don't think they're gonna move off of him. I think this is kind of how they're gonna be stuck for this year. And then next year they're gonna be in cap hell. So, I think this is kind of the Saints team. Drew Brees does not look good through 2 weeks. I don't want to overreact. I know this whole thing was me bashing Brees, and some people would say it's probably an overreaction. This is now 2 straight weeks where Drew Brees has looked old against a good Tampa Bay defense, and then a very bad Raiders defense. You tell me what to make of it. It doesn't look good. Whew. Week 3 is going to be good. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Washington, Browns, Bengals, Eagles, that's going to be really good. Raiders, Patriots, that's going to be good. It's going to be good. Jags, Dolphins tonight. Minshew, the mustache versus the beard and Ryan Fitzpatrick. We got some good games coming up. I'm so glad that the NFL has been able to play so far. And so far, no players are testing positive for COVID-19. So far, so good. Everything is looking up. I don't want to overreact to that either. I know there's always time for something to go wrong, but so far, I am glad nothing has gone wrong. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.